The sealed envelope at the engagement banquet. Chapter 1. Toasts and a secret envelope. The crystal chandelier of the five-star banquet hall spilled soft golden light over the entire venue. White tablecloths, delicate silverware, and neatly arranged champagne glasses glimmered under the glow. The air was filled with the sweet scent of roses and lilies, blended with the mellow aroma of red wine. Gentle background music flowed quietly, wrapping every guest in a warm, celebratory atmosphere. Today was my younger sister's engagement banquet. Lila was 2 years younger than me, with soft curly hair and clear, innocent doe eyes. Spoiled and cherished by our family since childhood, she had always been gentle, sensible, and worry-free. After graduating from college, she met Ethan, an architect with a calm, thoughtful temperament who treated her with endless patience and devotion. After 2 years of steady, sincere dating, they decided to spend their lives together. Today, all our relatives and friends had gathered to witness their happiness. I stood beside Lila, watching her with a tender smile. She wore a custom ivory midi dress that accentuated her slender figure. A delicate diamond necklace shimmered softly against her collarbone. Her cheeks blushed with shy, joyful excitement as she held Ethan's hand lightly. The two stood side by side, perfectly matched, radiating pure warmth and making every guest admire their sweetness. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate the engagement of my daughter Lila and Ethan, my father said, standing at the front of the hall with a glass of red wine in his hand. His voice was warm and steady, filled with undisguised joy. Time had left faint lines on his forehead, but today every trace of weariness was smoothed away by happiness. Watching my little girl grow from a child into a graceful young woman, and now embark on a new life with such an outstanding young man, I feel utterly grateful and at peace. Warm, sincere applause rippled across the banquet hall. My mother stood beside him, her eyes glistening with happy tears. She nodded gently to the guests, her smile soft and heartfelt. She had worried for years that her tender-hearted daughter might get hurt in love, but Ethan's consistent sincerity and thoughtfulness over the past 2 years had erased every last one of her fears. On behalf of our entire family, I raise this toast, Father said, lifting his glass higher and gazing at the smiling couple. May your love endure forever, your days be filled with sweetness, and your future be filled with companionship and peace. Cheers! Cheers! Every guest rose to their feet, glasses clinking brightly. Laughter and sincere blessings filled the room. I lifted my own champagne glass, my heart full of pure happiness for my sister. As her elder sister, I had walked through every stage of Lila's life with her. I had seen her sad, I had seen her joyful, and I had watched her slowly learn to love and be loved. To finally see her meet someone who truly cherished her filled me with quiet warmth and relief. Bathed in the chandelier light, Lila looked radiant. She clinked her glass softly against Ethan's and whispered her thanks, her sweet voice drawing another round of kind smiles from the crowd. In that perfect moment of pure celebration, a subtle movement at my side shattered the warmth. My fiancé, Lucian, who had stood silently beside me throughout the entire banquet, slowly lowered his champagne glass. Lucian had kept a low profile all night. Tall and sharply featured with deep, calm dark eyes, he had always been polite, gentle, and well-mannered around my family. He never sought attention, always behaved appropriately, and blended seamlessly into every family gathering. I had always loved his steady, restrained nature. In a world full of impulsive, fleeting emotions, his stability and rationality had always been my safest harbor. But tonight, his calmness felt unerringly different. His arm brushed lightly against mine. I turned instinctively, intending to ask if he was tired or needed a refill until the words died in my throat. Lucian slipped his hand into the inner pocket of his tailored black suit jacket. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. The music continued playing, the guests continued smiling, and every eye remained fixed on my sister and her fiancé. No one else noticed the shift. Only I did. With his long, slender fingers, he pulled out an envelope. It was no ordinary letter envelope. Thick, dark brown craft paper with a heavy, solemn matte texture, it was sealed completely with intact dark red wax. Embedded in the center of the wax was an intricate, unfamiliar crest intertwined vines and stars, a symbol I had never seen before in my life. My heart skipped a beat. A cold chill crawled up my spine, instantly sweeping away the warmth of the celebration. The festive atmosphere felt abruptly distant, sealed off by an invisible wall. The room felt tight, still, and suffocating. I stared frozen at the envelope, my lashes trembling, my smile fading completely. My throat felt tight and dry. "Lucian," I breathed, voice shaky and confused. "What is this?" He did not answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed forward, on the happy couple, his handsome face completely unreadable. No guilt, no hesitation, no remorse, only the quiet, endless depths of his dark eyes, hiding countless buried secrets. He held the envelope steadily, his fingers brushing gently over the paper as if weighing the truth inside. His composure was unshakable, yet every small motion sent violent waves of panic through my chest. By now, the surrounding guests had begun to notice the silence at our table. Laughter faded. Relatives and elders turned their heads one by one, curious and confused as locking onto the sealed envelope in Lucian's hand. The joyous atmosphere fractured, replaced by a thick, unsettling tension that spread through the room like fog. My father, still standing at the front, frowned slightly, his tone gentle but probing. "Lucian, is something wrong?" Every gaze in the hall shifted from my sister to us. Lila turned around, her bright eyes wide with bewilderment, unable to understand why her perfect engagement celebration had suddenly turned stiff and strange. Beneath the collective scrutiny of my entire family and every guest present, Lucian finally moved. He turned his head slowly to meet my eyes. His deep gaze tracked mine, and I could see nothing but my own panicked reflection in his pupils. His voice was low, magnetic, and unnervingly calm, echoing clearly through the quieting hall. "Inside this envelope," he said, each word sharp and unwavering, "is the truth that no one in this room knows." My breath caught completely. The warmth in the banquet hall vanished in an instant. The sweet floral and wine scent turned cold against my skin, leaving me rigid and numb. A truth no one knew. What truth could possibly demand exposure on my sister's engagement day? Why would my fiancé destroy this perfect, happy moment to reveal a secret buried so deeply it required a sealed, crested envelope? My mind raced wildly, scrambling through 3 years of memories with Lucian, every sweet moment, every promise, every plan we had made for our upcoming marriage. All the warmth and certainty I had clung to suddenly felt fragile, illusory, and tainted. I had always believed Lucian was my perfect, reliable future. Thoughtful, loyal, steady, and utterly devoted to me. We were engaged, our wedding planned, our lives mapped out in bright, certain lines. I had thought my family was safe, my sister happy, my love secure. This single envelope overturned everything. Lucian lifted the envelope slightly higher, letting the chandelier light burn brightly on the unbroken wax seal and its strange symbol. His gaze swept over my stunned parents, my confused sister, the whispering guests, before settling firmly on my pale face. "I do not intend to ruin today's celebration," he said calmly, his tone carrying unyielding resolve. "But today is the only appropriate day. Some secrets can no longer stay hidden. Some truths must be told, in front of everyone." The entire hall fell dead silent. Music, chatter, laughter, all of it vanished. Only the faint tremble of crystal pendants and the quiet, nervous breathing of dozens of guests remained. My hands trembled around my champagne glass, liquid sloshing softly, mirroring my shattered composure. I opened my mouth to demand answers, to beg him to stop, to ask why he would choose my sister's happiest day to shatter our lives. But it was too late. Lucian's finger pressed against the edge of the wax seal. He was going to open it. Before the eyes of my entire family, before every witness to my sister's engagement joy, he would expose the hidden truth locked inside that envelope. No one knew what it contained. No one knew what lies, what pain, what buried history was about to surface. But in that breathless, endless second, I understood one thing clearly. All the happiness I had cherished was never as real as I thought. And the man I loved more than anything had been hiding a massive, terrible secret, one he had been waiting for the perfect moment to destroy us all with. Chapter R. The Broken Seal. The crack of breaking wax cut through the silence like shattering glass. It was a sharp, crisp sound, impossibly loud in the empty quiet of the banquet hall. Every person in the room flinched subtly, as if the noise had physically jolted them awake from a hypnotic spell of joy. The intact dark red seal split cleanly down the center, the intricate vine and star crest snapping apart into two jagged, imperfect halves. Lucian did not rush. He peeled the broken wax fragments away with deliberate precision, setting them gently on the edge of the nearest dining table, as if honoring some ancient, unspoken ritual. His movements were still calm, unhurried, devoid of any trace of malice or excitement. If anything, there was a cold, solemn gravity in his posture, the gravity of someone unveiling a long-buried justice, not ruining a family's celebration. My vision blurred at the edges. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room burning into us. My mother's quiet gasp trembled in the still air. My father's shoulders went rigid, his gentle smile vanishing entirely, replaced by a tight, stern frown. Lila's small hand slipped out of Ethan's grasp. I could see her fingers curl into trembling fists at her sides, her innocent eyes wide with fright and incomprehension. "Lucian, stop," I whispered, my voice cracking, barely audible to anyone but him. "Please. Whatever it is, we can talk about it privately. Not today. Not on her day." He ignored me completely. His long fingers slipped into the open envelope and pulled out a stack of documents. They were not loose sheets of ordinary printer paper. These were thick, formal papers, legal documents, printed photographs, and folded handwritten letters, all bound neatly together with a plain black ribbon. The edges were crisp, unweathered, proof that they had been preserved carefully, hidden away for a very long time. A low, collective murmur rippled through the crowd before dying instantly, smothered by the oppressive tension. Lucian held the stack up for everyone to see. The chandelier light glinted off the glossy surface of the printed photos, making them partially visible from where the guests sat. I could not make out the details yet, but my heart lurched violently in my chest, a primal sense of dread coiling tight in my bones. 3 years ago, Lucian began, his voice steady and resonant, carrying to every corner of the frozen hall. "I came into this family not by chance, but by choice. Not as a random suitor for your eldest daughter, but to uncover the truth behind a hidden accident that destroyed my family 10 years ago." The world tilted beneath my feet. I staggered slightly, catching myself on the back of a dining chair to keep from collapsing. My ears rang loudly, drowning out everything else for a full second. An accident. 10 years ago. The words repeated in my mind, sharp and cold, slicing through every sweet memory I had of our relationship. "What are you talking about?" My father's voice was low, strained, the warmth completely gone from his tone. His jaw was tight, his gaze sharp and guarded. "There is no accident. Our family has always lived peacefully. You have no right to come here and slander us on false pretenses." "False pretenses," Lucian repeated quietly, a faint, bitter smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He flipped open the top photograph and held it forward. A collective horrified hush fell over the room. The photo was old, faded slightly at the edges, but brutally clear in its core details. It showed a serious car crash on a rain-slicked mountain road, crushed metal, shattered glass, skid marks stretching dozens of meters across the asphalt. A young couple lay motionless beside the wrecked vehicle, their faces blurred by the photo's age but their identities unmistakable to anyone who knew the story. No one in my family had ever spoken aloud. My parents, Lucian said flatly. They died on this road 10 years ago. The official police report labeled it a tragic single-vehicle accident caused by rainy weather and speeding. He flipped to the next document, a scanned copy of an old police report, stamped and dated. But it was not an accident. Every breath in the house stalled. I stared at Lucian, at the cold, unyielding resolve in his eyes, and suddenly understood why he had always felt distant. Why he had always loved me gently but never recklessly, why he had never fully let his guard down in 3 years of dating. Every sweet word, every tender gesture, every promise he had made to me, it had all been a mask. He had never loved me. He had only been investigating us. The road that night was not poorly lit, Lucian continued, his tone unemotional, as if reciting a case file rather than destroying the life of the woman he was engaged to. The speed recorded by traffic cameras was under the legal limit. The brakes were newly replaced and fully functional. The only variable that night was another vehicle, a vehicle that disappeared from all official records immediately after the crash. My mother's face drained of all color. She swayed on her feet, reaching out to grip my father's arm for support. You're insane, she whispered shakily. This is ridiculous. We have never. The vehicle belonged to your family, Lucian cut her off calmly. Silence exploded over the room, heavier than before. Guests shifted awkwardly in their seats, eyes wide, hands clamped over mouths to stifle gasps. Relatives exchanged panicked, disbelieving glances, none daring to speak. Lucian flipped to the next photo, this one sharper, more recent. It was a shot of my father's old luxury SUV, the one he had driven exclusively 10 years ago before replacing it without explanation. A tiny, distinctive scratch mark on the front bumper matched the fragment evidence recovered from the crash site, a detail the original police report had conveniently omitted. For 10 years, I have chased this truth, Lucian said. For 10 years, every lead ended abruptly, every witness went silent, every record was sealed or erased. I spent 2 years tracking down the last surviving witness, another driver on the road that night. He was paid to stay quiet. He only agreed to testify last month. My knees buckled. All those small, strange moments from my childhood suddenly clicked into place. The way my parents had never wanted us to travel that mountain road. The way they had gone tense and quiet whenever car accidents appeared on the news. The quiet, unspoken rule in our house, never ask about events from 10 years ago. I had always thought it was simple caution. It was guilt. Why not? I asked, my voice broken and hollow. My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. My whole world was crumbling around me, every foundation of my happy family turning to ash. Why wait until my sister's engagement party? Why wait until we're engaged? Lucian's gaze finally softened, just barely, when it met mine. There was no longer warmth in his eyes, no longer affection, no trace of the loving fiancé I had known. Only sorrow, sharp and unforgiving. Because I needed confirmation, he said. I needed proof that your parents were not just responsible for the crash, but for the cover-up that ruined my entire life. I needed proof that they used their wealth and influence to bury justice for a decade. He lifted one final document, a signed witness statement, notarized and official. And today, in front of every person who knows your family as kind, gentle, and perfect, I am finally presenting that proof. Lila let out a quiet, trembling sob. She stumbled backward, away from Ethan, away from our parents, her eyes filled with terror and betrayal. That's not true, she cried weakly. My parents would never hurt anyone. This is a lie. You're lying to ruin us. Ethan wrapped a protective arm around her shoulders, his own face pale and stunned, his eyes locked on the documents in Lucian's hand. My father's facade finally cracked. The gentle patriarch mask shattered completely. His jaw tightened, his eyes turning cold and defensive, the look of a man cornered after a decade of hiding. "You have no idea what you're doing," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You are destroying two young people's lives out of pointless revenge. My daughters are innocent. They know nothing." Lucian's gaze flicked to me, sharp and final. "I know they are innocent," he said quietly. "But their innocence was built on my family's grave." The entire banquet hall sat frozen, trapped in the aftermath of a truth no one had prepared to face. The celebration was dead. The joy was gone. The perfect, loving family I had spent my whole life believing in was nothing more than a beautiful, carefully constructed lie. And the man I loved, he had been my family's reckoning all along. Chapter 3, Cracks in the Bloodline. The first whisper came from the far end of the banquet room, thin and shaky, before erupting into a storm of quiet murmurs. Relatives leaned toward one another, hands cupped over mouths, I starting between my rigid parents, the devastated Lila, and the unyielding man I was supposed to marry. Old aunts who had praised our family's kindness an hour ago now wore faces of doubt and quiet judgment. Uncles who had toasted my father's integrity sat stiff in their chairs, their expressions hard and unreadable. I stood in the center of it all, burning with shame and disbelief. "Show it," an elderly uncle said suddenly, his voice rough and cutting through the noise. "If you have proof, show it. No one here will believe accusations without evidence." The room fell quiet again, every eye locking on Lucian. Lucian did not hesitate. He unfolded the witness statement, spreading the crisp paper flat for everyone to see. The handwriting was shaky, aged, the signature bold and legally stamped at the bottom. He read the words aloud, his voice unflinching, each sentence a hammer blow to my family's reputation. "On the rainy night of October 12th, 10 years ago, I was traveling west on Black Mountain Road. I witnessed a black luxury SUV drift across the center line, forcefully colliding with an oncoming sedan. The sedan spun out of control, crashing down the mountainside. The SUV slowed for 3 seconds, then accelerated and fled the scene. The driver did not call for help, did not report the crash. I was paid $500,000 cash to erase my memory of the incident and never speak of what I saw." A collective gasp tore through the crowd. My mother crumpled forward, her hands flying to her face, quiet sobs breaking free from her trembling lips. For the first time in my life, I saw her not as my graceful, unbreakable mother, but as a woman crumbling under the weight of a decade-old sin. My father did not flinch. He did not cry. He simply stood there, his face hard as stone, his gaze locked on Lucian with unbridled hatred. "That witness was desperate for money," he snarled. "He fabricated the entire story. You manipulated a vulnerable man to destroy us." "I have bank records," Lucian replied instantly, pulling another paper free from the stack. 10 years ago, a large anonymous deposit was made into his account the morning after the crash. The transaction trace leads directly to your personal offshore account. I have the receipts. I have the wire records. I have everything." My father's composure shattered entirely. His chest heaved, his face turning red with rage and panic. He took a step forward, fists clenched, and for a terrifying second I thought he would strike Lucian down in front of everyone. "You have been spying on my family for 3 years, he roared. "You manipulated my eldest daughter, gained our trust, infiltrated every corner of our lives just for revenge. You are no better than a criminal." "I am better," Lucian said coldly. "Because I came here for the truth. You spent 10 years burying it." I felt my own knees buckle, my vision swimming. All the small, invisible lies my parents had told me throughout my life crashed over me in a brutal wave. The reason we never visited Black Mountain. The reason my father had suddenly switched business directions 10 years ago. The reason our family had grown inexplicably wealthy overnight, with no clear explanation for the sudden profit boom. It had all been hush money. Blood money. I turned to my parents, my voice raw and broken, begging for denial, for anything to fix the nightmare unfolding around us. Dad. Mom. Tell me it's not true. Please. Silence. Their lack of answer was the worst confirmation possible. Lila let out a broken scream, twisting out of Ethan's hold and backing away from our parents as if they were strangers. Her delicate engagement dress, once glowing with celebration, now looked sickeningly white against her ashen face. You killed someone. She cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. You lied to me my entire life. You let me grow up believing we were good people while you buried a family's death. Lila, baby, it was an accident, my mother sobbed, reaching for her. It was raining, it was dark, we panicked, we were young, we were scared. You left them to die. Lucian snapped, his voice rising for the first time, raw with suppressed grief. My parents were alive when you fled. They bled to death alone on that mountain road while you drove home, showered, and pretended nothing had happened. The room went deathly quiet again. No one moved. No one breathed. I stared at Lucian, at the agony finally breaking through his cold mask, and understood the full horror of what had happened. For 3 years, he had loved me from a distance while carrying the corpse of his family in his heart. For 3 years, he had smiled at my parents, eaten at our table, celebrated our holidays, all while remembering the night they destroyed everything he had. Every kiss had been a lie. Every gentle word had been a performance. Every promise of marriage had been a calculated step toward this exact moment public ruin. Did you ever love me? I whispered, the question tearing out of my throat. Lucian's eyes locked onto mine, stormy and conflicted, no longer purely cold or vengeful. For a long, endless moment, he did not answer. The guests watched us, breathless, waiting for the final nail in the coffin of our broken engagement. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower, rougher, stripped of all pretense. I don't know, he said honestly. For the first year, it was all investigation. All revenge. But you were nothing like your family. You were kind, honest, you loved purely, you cared so deeply for everyone around you. Somewhere along the way, the lines blurred. My heart shattered completely. It was worse than a flat denial. It was worse than pure hatred. He had cared for me, despite himself. He had loved me against his own mission. And still, he had chosen to destroy me anyway. But the truth outweighed everything, he finished firmly. I could not let another year pass with your family living in perfect peace while mine rotted in the ground. My father let out a bitter, hollow laugh. So you ruined my daughters to avenge yours. You punished the innocent for the sins of the guilty. That is not justice, Lucian. That is cruelty. Your daughters benefited from my family's death, Lucian shot back. Your wealth, your status, your perfect life, all of it was built on the settlement you paid to bury the case. They lived a privileged life because my parents died in agony. Innocence does not erase privilege built on blood. The words landed like a slap. I knew it was true. I knew every luxury I had ever enjoyed, every safe, happy moment of my childhood, had been funded by a family's destruction. Guilt crashed over me in suffocating waves. I sank down onto the cold banquet floor, my dress pulling around my knees, tears finally spilling free. The crystal lights blurred above me, the beautiful hall turning into a tomb of lies. Around me, the entire world I had known fractured beyond repair. Chapter 4, Aftermath of the Fall. Within minutes, the engagement banquet dissolved into chaos. Some guests stood up and left silently, unable to bear the suffocating tension, unwilling to witness the total collapse of a family they had always admired. Others stayed rooted in their seats, glued to the catastrophic scene unfolding before them, whispering furiously among themselves. Relatives pulled out their phones, filming discreetly, uploading clips to private group chats. The scandal would spread through our entire social circle by midnight. Our family's flawless reputation, built over decades, was destroyed in a single hour. Lila stood frozen in the middle of the hall, her engagement ring glinting mockingly on her finger. She stared at our parents as if seeing them for the very first time, her youthful innocence shattered into a million pieces. Ethan stood beside her, his protective stance unwavering, but his face was pale and uncertain. I could see the doubt in his eyes, the quiet fear that if our family was capable of hiding a fatal crash and a decade-long cover-up, what else might we be hiding? Lila, he said gently, tentatively reaching for her hand. We should go. She pulled away from him. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered brokenly. I don't know who any of us are. My mother collapsed into a nearby chair, sobbing uncontrollably, her elegant makeup streaked down her face. She had spent 10 years perfecting the image of a gentle, charitable, perfect wife and mother, and now every layer of that image had been stripped bare for the world to see. My father remained standing, stiff and defiant, staring down Lucian with unyielding hatred. What do you want? He demanded. Money. Compensation. We will pay you whatever you want. Just leave my family alone. Lucian shook his head slowly, his expression empty of greed. I do not want your money, he said. I want a formal confession. I want the police case reopened. I want your name officially recorded in the files as responsible for the crash and cover-up. I want the world to know the truth. You will ruin us completely, my mother gasped. You ruined yourselves 10 years ago, Lucian replied flatly. He turned away from my parents finally, his gaze falling back on me, still kneeling on the floor. The cold vengeance in his eyes faded, replaced by a deep, weary sorrow. I was the only casualty he had never wanted. I'm sorry, he whispered, only loud enough for me to hear. I never wanted to hurt you. But I had no other choice. I lifted my tear-streaked face to meet his eyes, my heart broken beyond mending. You used me, I said shakily. You pretended to love me, you proposed to me, you planned a future with me all to get close to my family. Yes, he admitted without flinching. At first. And now? I pressed. Now that you ruined us, what happens to us? What happens to our engagement? The question hung in the air, heavy and final. The entire room waited. Lucian knelt down in front of me, his tailored suit brushing the floor, his face level with mine. His fingers hovered gently over my cheek, hesitant, as if afraid to touch me after the damage he had done. The engagement is broken, he said quietly. I cannot marry you. Not after this. Not while your parents still refuse to atone for their sins. A fresh wave of tears crashed over me. I had known it was coming, but hearing the words spoken aloud shattered the last piece of my hope. 3 years of love, memories, late-night talks, future plans, wedding dreams, all of it vanished in an instant, reduced to a manipulative scheme. But I do not hate you, Lucian said firmly. You are innocent in every way that matters. If you choose to leave this family, to walk away from their sins, I will help you rebuild your life from nothing. Whatever you need. Leave my family. I glanced up at my sobbing mother, my rigid father, my shattered little sister, the only family I had ever known. They were sinners, liars, people who had buried a terrible secret for a decade. But they were still my parents. Still my sister. I could not abandon them. But I could no longer stand beside them either. I was caught in the middle, torn between the family who raised me and the man who destroyed them, between blood and truth, between love and justice. I don't know what I want, I whispered brokenly. Lucian nodded slowly, understanding settling over his features. Take all the time you need, he said. I will wait. But the truth will not wait. Tomorrow morning, I will submit all evidence to the police. The investigation begins. My father let out a roar of rage, lunging forward, only to be held back by several frantic relatives. You will regret this, he shouted. You will regret destroying us. Lucian stood slowly, tucking all documents back into the brown envelope, sealing it once more with careful hands. I have regretted every day of the last 10 years, he said quietly. Regret is no longer enough. He took one final look at me, his eyes filled with a pain so deep it made my chest ache, then turned and walked out of the banquet hall without another word. The doors clicked shut behind him. The celebration was dead. My family was broken. My love was a lie. And tomorrow, the entire world would know our shameful, buried truth. Chapter 5, The Quiet Before the Storm. The remaining guests fled one by one after Lucian's departure. No one offered comfort. No one spoke gentle words. They left with heads bowed, eyes full of judgment, carrying our family's scandal out into the open world. Within 10 minutes, the grand banquet hall was empty, save for my fractured family and the scattered remains of my sister's engagement celebration. Champagne glasses stood half full on every table, flower arrangements wilted slightly under the still air, colorful balloon decorations swayed faintly in the draft left by the departing crowd. The whole room felt like a beautiful tomb, decorated for a joy that had died violently mid-celebration. Lila sank onto a chair, her shoulders shaking violently, her hands trembling as she twisted her engagement ring back and forth on her finger. I want to take it off, she whispered, staring at the diamond glinting on her hand. This ring. This whole day. I want to erase it all. Ethan sat beside her, silent and steady, his hand resting gently on her back. He did not push her to speak, did not rush her to decide their future. He simply stayed, a quiet anchor in our collapsing world. My father stood alone at the front of the hall, staring blankly at the empty stage where he had delivered his toast minutes earlier. All his pride, his dignity, his carefully crafted legacy had crumbled to dust. I was scared, he whispered suddenly, his voice hoarse and defeated, no longer angry or defensive. It was raining so hard. The roads were slippery. We swerved, we hit them, and everything happened so fast. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. My mother lifted her tear-streaked face, nodding brokenly. We were 28, she sobbed. We were kids. We had no idea how to fix something that broken. We thought if we hid it, paid people off, buried the evidence, we could move on. We could protect our future, protect our girls. You protected us with someone else's blood, I said quietly, standing slowly from the floor. My legs ached, my head throbbed, my heart felt hollow and cold in my chest. All my life I had admired my parents, respected them, trusted them completely. Now I saw them not as heroes, but as ordinary, flawed people who had made an unforgivable choice and spent a decade running from it. We tried to be good parents, my mother cried. We gave you everything. We loved you so much. You gave us a lie, I replied. You gave us a fake perfect life built on someone else's tragedy. You let us grow up blind while a boy lost his entire family and spent 10 years plotting revenge. My father's shoulders slumped forward, age settling over him in an instant. He looked 10 years older, worn out by guilt and defeat. I will take responsibility, he said quietly. Tomorrow, when the police come, I will confess. I will accept whatever punishment they give me. Your mother had no part in the cover-up. It was all my decision. All my sin. My mother gasped, shaking her head frantically. No, we did this together. We lived with this together. I am not letting you take the blame alone. You have to, my father said firmly. The girls need one parent left. If we both go to prison, what happens to Lila? What happens to our eldest daughter? They lose everything. A fresh wave of sorrow washed over me. Even in their ruin, They were still trying to protect us. Even after everything they had done, their love for us was real. But their love had been selfish, blind, destructive, and it had destroyed another family entirely. Lila stood up slowly, wiping her tears from her cheeks, her young face hardening with a maturity she had never needed to gain. I don't want you to go to prison, she said softly. But I can't pretend this didn't happen. I can't go back to being the naive, happy girl who thought our family was perfect. Everything is different now. Ethan squeezed her shoulder gently. Whatever happens, he said quietly, I'm here. Whatever you decide, Lila, I'll stay with you. His loyalty made my throat tighten with tears. In the chaos of our family's ruin, he was still choosing my sister. Still choosing goodness. I walked slowly toward the banquet hall windows, staring out at the dark night sky. The city lights glittered far below, bright and indifferent to our family's destruction. Tomorrow, the sun would rise normally for everyone else. For us, it would rise on the start of our reckoning. I thought of Lucian, walking alone into the night, carrying his decade of grief and vengeance. I thought of the boy who had lost his parents, who had grown up alone, who had infiltrated my life for revenge and accidentally fallen for me. I thought of our broken engagement, our shattered future, the love that had been both real and fake all at once. What do we do now? I whispered to no one in particular. No one had an answer. The night stretched long and endless around us, quiet and heavy, the calm before the storm that would consume our entire family. And somewhere out in the dark, Lucian was preparing to end everything we had ever known. The night fell heavy and dead over the empty banquet venue after Lucian's departure. The staff quietly cleaned up the shattered celebration, clearing away wilted roses, empty champagne flutes, and confetti that no longer symbolized joy. Every trivial, beautiful detail from Lila's engagement dinner now felt bitterly ironic, a cruel contrast to the irreversible truth that had exploded into public view hours earlier. I stood motionless by the floor-to-ceiling windows, my bare arms chilled by the cold glass. The city skyline glittered endlessly ahead, bright and indifferent to our family's collapse. Ordinary people slept soundly in their homes, unaware that a perfect local family's decades-long reputation had crumbled in a single night, unaware that a 10-year-old buried tragedy had finally clawed its way back to the surface. Lila sat silently on a banquet chair, her delicate ivory engagement dress crumpled and stained with faint tear tracks. She had taken off her diamond engagement ring, placing it neatly on the white tablecloth beside her fingers. The brilliant stone sparkled under the chandelier light, yet it looked hollow and meaningless now. All the romantic promises, the 2 years of gentle dating, the future they had carefully planned together, none of it felt real anymore. Ethan stayed faithfully by her side, not rushing her to speak, not abandoning her in our family's darkest hour. He simply sat quietly, his gaze soft and understanding, his hand resting gently on her trembling shoulder. His quiet loyalty was the only warm and unbroken thing left in this ruined night. My parents stood apart from us, trapped in their own crushing guilt and despair. The perfect, gentle, respectable masks they had worn for 20 years had completely fallen away, leaving only two terrified, aging people haunted by a youthful mistake they had spent a decade trying to bury. My father's broad shoulders sat completely. The confident, warm patriarch who had stood on stage delivering a heartfelt toast merely an hour ago was gone. His eyes were hollow, lined with deep exhaustion and regret. Every trace of his former pride faded into nothing but defeat. I never meant for any of this to destroy the girls, he said hoarsely, breaking the long heavy silence. His voice was rough and cracked, stripped of all strength and pretense. That night, it rained so hard I could barely see the road. The tires skidded instantly. I panicked. I was young, selfish, and cowardly. I was terrified of losing everything we had just built: our career, our reputation, our future family. I made the worst choice of my entire life, and I dragged your mother into it with me. My mother broke down into quiet, broken sobs, her body shaking uncontrollably. She had always been the soft, graceful, compassionate woman everyone admired, but tonight, grief and guilt had shattered her completely. I tried to persuade him to call the police, she whispered, tears streaming down her ruined makeup. I begged him to stop, to save the injured couple, to take responsibility for the accident. But I was young too. I was scared of losing our stable life, scared of shame, scared of having everything we worked for crumble overnight. I was weak. I chose to hide rather than to atone. I have lived with this heavy guilt every single day for 10 years. Their confessions settled thick and suffocating over the empty banquet hall. There was no excuse, no redemption, no way to sugarcoat the truth. They had abandoned 2 dying people on a desolate mountain road, covered up a fatal car crash with money and power, and built our entire perfect, privileged life on top of someone else's tragic death. I closed my eyes tightly, my chest aching with a messy tangle of emotions: grief, anger, shame, confusion, and heartbreaking conflict. I loved my parents sincerely. They had raised me with endless care, given me every possible comfort, protected me from every hardship, loved my sister and me with all their hearts. Yet their love was tainted, their kindness built on sin, our entire happy childhood a beautiful lie. I don't hate you, I said quietly, my voice trembling with suppressed tears. But I can never look at our family the same way again. Everything I believed was pure and good was just a carefully constructed illusion. Lila lifted her tear-streaked face, her innocent doe eyes no longer bright and naive. They were clouded with sorrow and disillusionment, her youthful innocence permanently shattered by the brutal truth. I grew up believing we were the lucky family, she whispered brokenly. I thought we were kind, honest, blessed. I thought my parents were the most gentle and righteous people in the world. I never knew our happiness was stolen from someone else. I never knew our peaceful life came from burying another family's pain. Ethan pulled Lila gently into his arms, holding her securely as she finally let out all her suppressed grief. He pressed a soft kiss to her hair, his voice steady and reassuring amid our family's ruin. Your parents' mistakes are not yours, Lila, he said firmly. You are pure and kind. You have never harmed anyone. You do not have to carry their guilt. I love you, and nothing about your family's past will ever change that. His words brought a faint tremor of comfort to the suffocating despair filling the room. In the wreckage of our broken family, Ethan's unwavering love for my sister remained genuine and unshakable. The clock on the banquet wall ticked slowly, each second stretching endlessly. Midnight passed, and the dark night stretched on, silent and cold. None of us could sleep. None of us could live. We were all trapped in the aftermath of a decade-old secret finally exposed to light. Early the next morning, just as the first faint gray light seeped over the city skyline, the doorbell of our family villa rang sharply. We had returned home numbly in the early hours, our hearts heavy with dread. We all knew what was coming. Lucian had kept his word. 2 uniformed police officers stood at the doorway, calm and formal, holding official case files and search warrants. We have received sufficient evidence regarding a 10-year-old traffic accident and subsequent cover-up, one officer said steadily. We are here to open a formal investigation and take statements from all involved parties. My mother collapsed into the sofa, her face drained of all color. My father stood straight, finally accepting his fate with quiet resignation. There was no more denial, no more defense, no more desperate lies. The decade of hiding was finally over. I will cooperate fully, my father said quietly. I will confess everything. All responsibility falls on me. Over the next 3 days, our entire world fell apart completely. The police reopened the cold case, reviewing all the evidence Lucian had submitted, the witness testimony, the bank transfer records, the vehicle scratch matching evidence, the erased traffic camera footage, and the falsified old police report that had been tampered with using my father's social influence. The scandal spread rapidly through our entire city's social circle. Every relative, every family friend, every business partner who had once praised our family's perfection now whispered judgment behind our backs. News articles circulated online, exposing the hidden tragedy and the wealthy family's cruel cover-up. Our family's reputation, built over decades, was destroyed completely within 72 hours. Relatives distanced themselves from us fearfully, afraid of being implicated in the scandal. Business partners terminated long-term cooperation agreements, cutting off all ties to avoid reputational damage. The perfect, respected social status my parents had spent their lives building vanished overnight. Through all the chaos and public humiliation, Lila remained fragile but steady. She ended all engagement celebrations publicly, releasing a short statement saying she needed time to heal and re-evaluate her future. She did not blame our parents, nor did she defend their sins. She simply chose to step away from the spotlight, quietly processing the trauma of losing her perfect family illusion overnight. Ethan stayed by her side every single day, never leaving, never wavering. He accompanied her through every interrogation, every awkward family meeting, every moment of public judgment. His consistent kindness became Lila's only stable anchor in the storm. As for me, I existed in a constant state of hollow conflict. I missed Lucian fiercely. Despite everything he had done, despite his 3 years of calculated deception, despite the cruel public destruction he had inflicted on my family, I could not erase the love I had felt for him. I thought back to every quiet moment we had shared, the late-night conversations, the gentle care, the sincere companionship, the sweet promises we had made for our future wedding. Most of those moments had been real. I had seen the conflict in his eyes, the way he cared for me despite his mission, the sorrow he could never fully hide. He had been a victim long before he became my destroyer. He had lost both parents at a young age, grown up alone, spent 10 years haunted by grief and injustice, and infiltrated my family purely to seek closure for his dead parents. His revenge was cruel, but it was understandable. For a full week after the banquet incident, I had no contact with Lucian. He disappeared completely, no longer answering my messages or calls, no longer appearing in any of the places we once frequented. He had completed his revenge, broken our engagement, exposed the truth, and cut me cleanly out of his life. Yet I could not let go. On the 8th night after the scandal, I drove alone to the quiet hilltop overlooking Black Mountain Road, the site of the fatal accident 10 years ago. The night wind was cold and sharp, sweeping over the empty mountain road, carrying a faint, desolate silence. And there he was. Lucian stood alone at the roadside, dressed in a simple black coat, staring quietly into the dark valley where his parents' car had crashed 10 years prior. His tall figure looked lonely and exhausted. All the cold vengeance from the banquet night faded away, leaving only endless grief and weariness. I parked my car quietly and walked toward him, my footsteps slow and hesitant on the empty road. He turned at the sound of my approach, his dark eyes widening slightly in surprise. No anger flashed in his gaze, no cold hostility remained. Only quiet, tired acceptance. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, his voice hoarse. "I need to talk to you," I replied steadily. "I need the truth. All of it." He stared at me for a long moment, the mountain wind stirring his dark hair, before he finally nodded and gestured for me to stand beside him. "I was 17 when my parents died," he said quietly, staring out at the dark mountain shadows. "I watched the official report label their death a simple accident. I watched every witness disappear. I watched every record get altered. I spent my entire youth chasing a truth everyone else was paid to hide. I built my entire life around revenge," he continued, his tone hollow. "I studied your family for years, learned every habit, every weakness, every detail. I approached you deliberately, pretended to be gentle and steady, perfectly tailored to the kind of partner you would fall in love with. Every step was calculated, every smile planned. At first, my heart ached sharply, but I did not look away. But somewhere in those 3 years, he admitted, his voice softening painfully, I forgot how to pretend. I stopped acting. I truly cared for you. I loved your kindness, your purity, your gentle heart. You were the only good thing in my dark, vengeful life. You were completely innocent, yet you were tangled into my hatred from the moment I met you. I had 2 choices, he said, his eyes locking firmly onto mine. I could abandon my revenge, let my parents' injustice remain buried forever, and spend my life happily with you. Or I could complete my mission, expose the truth, destroy your family, and lose you forever. I chose justice, he whispered. It was the right choice, but it was the most painful choice I have ever made. Tears welled silently in my eyes, slipping down my cold cheeks. You destroyed my family, I said shakily. You ruined our reputation, shattered my sister's engagement, broke our engagement, and turned our entire life upside down. I know, he replied, his voice thick with regret. I will carry the guilt of hurting you for the rest of my life. But I could not let my parents die in vain. I could not let your family live in perfect peace while mine rotted in the ground. I took a deep, trembling breath, asking the question that had haunted me every night since the banquet. If you could go back, I whispered, would you do it all again? He did not hesitate. Yes, he said firmly. I would expose the truth again. But I would never let you fall in love with me. I would never drag an innocent person into my pain. The cold mountain wind swept between us, separating the fragile distance remaining. My father ultimately pleaded guilty to traffic accident manslaughter and intentional cover-up. Because he voluntarily confessed, cooperated fully with the investigation, and offered full financial compensation to the surviving family relatives of Lucian's parents, his sentence was reduced. He received a 5-year prison term. My mother was cleared of criminal charges due to passive participation and sincere remorse, but she was left with permanent public shame and endless guilt. She withdrew completely from society, living quietly at home, devoting every day to charity and community service, trying to atone for her sin in the only way she could. Our family's wealth was largely seized as compensation and fine. Our luxurious houses and fancy cars were auctioned off. We lost every privilege we had once taken for granted, returning to an ordinary, simple life stripped of all pretense and glory. Lila slowly healed from the trauma. She never resented our parents, nor did she defend their mistake. She chose to forgive and move forward, growing far more mature and sensible than her age. After half a year of healing, she restarted her engagement with Ethan. Their relationship became quieter, more steady, and far more sincere, built on genuine love rather than perfect superficial appearances. As for Lucian and me, we had no easy ending. Justice was served. The truth was exposed. His parents finally received the justice they had been denied for a decade. But love between us was permanently broken. We had loved each other genuinely, yet our love was born from deception, built on hatred, and destroyed by justice. There was no right or wrong between us, only endless tragedy and bad fate. Months later, I stood alone at the city's winter night festival, watching the bright fireworks bloom across the dark sky. The colorful lights reflected in my eyes, warm and brilliant, yet my heart remained quiet and hollow. I finally understood the cruel meaning hidden in that sealed brown envelope all along. Some truths redeem the dead, but they always destroy the living. Lucian got his justice, but we both lost our forever. Months slipped by in quiet, muted repetition, each day blending into the next with no celebration, no grand occasion, no trace of the warm, bustling life my family once knew. The scandal had faded from public chatter, replaced by newer gossip and fresher stories, but for us, The aftermath lingered like a permanent shadow. We had lost our reputation, our wealth, our home, and the innocent illusion of perfection we had spent our entire lives believing in. What remained was plain, ordinary life, humble, unadorned, and painfully honest. I moved into a small, simple apartment near the city library, trading luxury penthouse views for quiet street trees and soft evening lamplight. I quit my former high-paying office job, unable to bear the quiet stares and unspoken judgment from former colleagues who still whispered about our family's past. Instead, I took a quiet administrative position at a local community charity, spending my days organizing donation supplies, assisting vulnerable families, and sorting public welfare documents. The work was simple, tiring, and unglamorous, but it grounded me. It forced me to live modestly, to value ordinary goodness, and to understand that true dignity never came from wealth, status, or flawless public appearances. Every weekend, I visited my mother. She had grown noticeably frail and quiet in the past few months. The vibrant, elegant, sociable woman who once hosted grand dinner parties and smiled effortlessly in front of crowds was gone. She rarely left the house, dressed simply in plain neutral-colored clothes, no longer wearing jewelry or delicate makeup. Most of her time was spent volunteering at orphanages and disaster relief organizations, donating almost all of her remaining savings to public welfare funds. She never spoke of the past proudly, never made excuses, never complained about her fallen status. She simply worked quietly, tirelessly, as if exhausting every ounce of her energy could somehow lighten the heavy guilt weighing on her soul. She never asked for forgiveness, but I knew she was trying her best to atone. My father's prison visits were scheduled once a month. Each time I saw him through the thick isolation glass, he looked older, thinner, and more worn. The arrogance and confidence that once defined him had completely faded. He spoke softly, asked only about my mother's health, Lila's condition, and my daily life. He never mentioned Lucian, never mentioned the accident, never tried to justify his youthful mistake. He accepted his punishment calmly, knowing fully that this was the only fair ending he deserved. "I'm glad you girls grew up kind," he said to me during one visit, his voice low and steady through the phone receiver. "I ruined my own life, but I never want my sin to poison yours. Live well. Live honestly. That is the best redemption you can give me." His words settled heavily in my chest. For the first time, I truly understood that guilt was not only punishment but also a lifelong lesson. Lila and Ethan's relationship grew quieter but infinitely stronger. They no longer posted romantic photos on social media, no longer attended flashy banquets or grand social events. Instead, they spent their weekends cooking simple meals, walking in ordinary city parks, reading books together, and planning a plain, low-key wedding with only close family and friends. Lila told me gently that she no longer craved glamorous perfection. After witnessing the collapse of our family's false perfection, she valued stability, sincerity, and unpretentious companionship far more than luxury or reputation. "True happiness doesn't need to be shown to others," she said softly. "It just needs to feel real inside." I was endlessly grateful that my sister's innocence had not been completely destroyed by our family's sin. She had been hurt, disillusioned, and traumatized, but she still chose kindness, still believed in love, still chose to live gently and sincerely. As for Lucian, I never saw him again for half a year. He had completely vanished from my world. He unfollowed all our mutual social accounts, blocked my contact information, moved out of the city, and cut off every possible connection between us. He had gotten his justice, reopened the case, restored his parents' reputation, and ruined the family that had destroyed his childhood. He had every reason to walk forward freely, to let go of the pain, to rebuild his own life. Yet deep inside me, I knew he was not truly free. Justice could restore truth, but it could never erase the pain, never mend the scars, Never undo the cruel love that had grown between two people destined to be enemies. One rainy evening in late autumn, I stayed late at the charity office sorting winter donation codes. The rain tapped gently against the window glass, blurring the neon city lights outside into soft, hazy color blocks. The entire city was quiet and damp, wrapped in the cold loneliness of late autumn. When I walked out of the office building, ready to head home with an umbrella, I froze in place. Under the dim street lamp, standing quietly beside the roadside tree, was Lucian. He was thinner than before, his jawline sharper, his eyes deeper and more tired. He wore a simple black coat soaked slightly by fine rain, his hair damp at the ends. He looked worn out, quiet, and completely different from the cold, decisive, vengeful man who had shattered my family at the engagement banquet. Our eyes locked across the rainy night. My breath stalled instantly. My fingers tightened around the umbrella handle, my heart pounding violently after months of complete silence. I had imagined countless accidental encounters, countless conversations, countless possibilities of reunion, but none of them matched the quiet, helpless sadness in his eyes at this moment. He walked slowly toward me, his footsteps steady but hesitant, as if afraid to startle me, as if afraid I would turn around and run. "I didn't mean to disturb you," he said softly, his voice low and hoarse from long disuse. "I just passed through this city tonight. I had to see you once." The rain fell gently between us, separating us with a thin cold barrier. "You got your justice," I said quietly, my voice trembling slightly. "The case is closed. Your parents' names are cleared. Everything you wanted is done." He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving my face. "It's done," he admitted. "But I'm not healed." He paused, swallowing hard before continuing, his tone filled with endless quiet regret. "For 10 years, my whole life was revenge. I survived only to expose your family's sin. I had no other goal, no other hope, no other future. But after I finished everything, I had nothing left. All I had spent years chasing was gone. And the only person I cared about was the person I had hurt the most." Tears blurred my vision silently. "I had no right to fall in love with you," he whispered. "You were innocent. You were kind. You never deserved to be caught between my hatred and your family's sin. I destroyed your engagement, ruined your family's reputation, took away your perfect life, and left you with nothing but pain and guilt. Every single day after that, I regretted it. I should have hated you," I replied softly. "I tried to hate you. I tried to forget you. But I couldn't." The rain grew slightly heavier, pattering on the pavement. "Can we ever start over?" Lucian asked, his voice fragile and desperate, a tone I had never heard from him before. "I know I hurt you irreparably. I know your family will never forgive me. I know the past can never be erased. But if you are willing, I can stay. I can spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I stared at him quietly, watching the rain slide down his cold cheeks, watching the genuine sorrow and longing in his deep eyes. I knew the truth clearly. We could never return to the past. We could never go back to those sweet, simple days of innocent dating and hopeful future plans. Too much pain stood between us, too many sins, too many ruined lives, too much irreversible damage. Our love was born from deception, grew in contradiction, and survived in guilt. It was a love that should never have existed, tangled between justice and sin, family and hatred, truth and illusion. But it was still real. "I forgive you," I said softly, finally. "I forgive your revenge. I forgive your deception. I forgive the pain you brought me. But forgiveness does not mean we can go back." Lucian's shoulders trembled slightly, his gaze darkening with overwhelming loss. "I know," he whispered. "We both have to live with the consequences now," I continued steadily. "Your justice required my family's ruin. My family's sin required your lifelong pain. There is no winner, no loser, no redemption. Only two people who loved each other at the wrong time, in the wrong story. The rainy night wrapped us in quiet sorrow. We stood face to face for a long time, no more arguments, no more hatred, no more revenge. Only gentle, helpless farewell. In the end, Lucian smiled faintly, a tired, bitter, gentle smile. I'm glad I met you, he said. Even if it ruined everything. With that, he turned slowly and walked back into the rainy night, disappearing into the dim city lights without looking back. This time, I did not chase him. I stood quietly under my umbrella, watching his figure fade completely into the rain, feeling my heart finally settle into calm, peaceful acceptance. Some love is not meant for possession. Some truth is not meant for happiness. Some fate is only meant for gentle, lifelong regret. We got the truth. We got justice. We got redemption for the dead. But for the living, we only got endless quiet, gentle sorrow, and a forever unfinished ending.